Hello, my fellow Gentiles, and welcome to the finale of my review series for Fallout New Vegas' second story expansion, Honest Hearts. This review series has been something of a turbulent road, and to say that I've had a number of issues with this expansion would be something of an understatement. If I haven't made it clear by this point, let me just say that I love Fallout New Vegas. I think it's the single best written game the West has ever produced, with a world, characters, and history that are endlessly engrossing, not once hesitating to use this rich and complex world to ask even more complicated questions that remain relevant to the real world over a decade after the game was released. New Vegas is a landmark title in video games that deserves every bit of praise that it's ever gotten. That being said, Honest Hearts is easily the single weakest aspect of New Vegas by a significant margin.
이런 새끼가 다 있어.
I understand that there are some people who adore this expansion, and I definitely think it has some major positives going for it. The most significant being Joshua Graham, who is easily one of the most fascinating characters in the entirety of Fallout New Vegas' roster, right up there with Mr. House, Ulysses, Edward Sallow, and Frederick Sinclair. Joshua is one of the most brilliantly subversive characters that I think I've ever even seen in fiction. For the entirety of the base game, you catch wind of these legends of a burned man that Caesar has forbade his legion from even uttering the name of.
Ah, yes. We are forbidden from speaking his true name. He was a shaman of some kind before he met Caesar, a holy man from out of the Utah. The burned man proved dangerous, unpredictable, and impossible to kill. He helped Caesar form the Legion, but almost led it to destruction.
The Burned Man was Caesar's advisor and general when the Legion was originally formed. The Burned Man led us to a disastrous defeat at the dam. On Caesar's orders, the Burned Man was covered in pitch by the Praetorian Guard, lit on fire, and cast into the Grand Canyon. Caesar has forbidden us from ever speaking his true name again, and so we simply refer to him as the Burned Man.
He's made out to be this complete and utter monster of a character, but upon meeting him, you see a man covered in bandages that preaches the gospel every chance he's given. One would be forgiven for thinking at this point that he himself can and will no longer fight, at least to the extent that he did when commanding Caesar's legion as the Malpais legate. Joshua is complex, desiring a life of peace but seeing war as a necessity for maintaining that peace. His past still haunts him both physically and mentally, and they will for all of time. And the man has endured more than most ever could imagine.
You are kind to offer, but no. There's nothing you can do. We don't use chems, but I learned long ago that I'm immune to their effects. It never stops burning. My skin. Every day I have to unwind the bandages and replace them with fresh ones. Exposing my body to the air is like living through it again. But it's better to be clean than comfortable.
But he's no saint either.
We warned you at Syracuse, and you persisted. You took advantage of us at New Canaan to drive us out. And like the dogs of Caesar you are, you followed us to Zion. And now you stand on holy ground, a temple to God's glory on earth. The only use for an animal in our temple is sacrifice. Kale wachene conserva o. You understand me, don't you? Don't you?
Then there are the Sorrows, a tribe that have been lucky enough to experience multiple generations of peaceful living and now are being forced to face their first true conflict. I said in one of the previous videos that I think Joshua Graham is absolutely right in teaching them how to defend themselves, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a sense of tragedy in the loss of their proverbial innocence.
I do. A fine husband and 3 children. I miss them each day, but I take comfort in knowing they are safe. When we learned that Salt Upon Wounds had defiled Zion with his presence, Daniel ordered the children, the old, and the sick evacuated from the camp. My husband volunteered to lead the hunters that went with them for protection. I try not to worry about them, but we have had no news for so long, and Daniel seems sad when I ask him about it. Sad and a little frightened. What? No. You must be mistaken. Daniel would have told me! How dare he? What gives him the right? I thought Daniel was my friend, but he cares nothing for the Sorrows. About Daniel? I don't yet know. But I am a woman of the Sorrows, and I will have restitution for my husband.
Just talking to Waking Cloud about the loss of her husband is enough to make one ponder the tragedy that is their role within the conflict. And even with Joshua looking after them, the endings make it clear that this conflict will have an everlasting effect on the tribe. It's one thing to see war, but it's another to see it for the first time. And I think Honest Hearts does a really good job at putting this into perspective. Conflict is inevitable, but that doesn't make it any less unpleasant. But for every Joshua, there is a Salt Upon Wounds. Going into this DLC for the first time in so long, I was really excited to see what I could learn about Zion, and I was disappointed in a number of its aspects. I appreciate the dynamic of the dead horses in Joshua, but the lack of any real compelling backstory for the dead horses makes it really difficult to care about them to the same extent that I do the Sorrows. I like Follows Chalk, and I think his sense of curiosity is a great platform for his character work. I also love that his curiosity came about from an encounter with a wandering musician who prompted Follows Chalk to wonder about a world where a man can make a living just off of performing. I like Follows Chalk, but there's just not that much to get into and dissect when it comes to him or the dead horses. But even they cannot compare to the Whitelegs when it comes to how little there is to talk about. The Whitelegs do become a bit more fleshed out in the Lonesome Road expansion where Ulysses describes how he managed to align them with the Legion, but that's 2 whole expansions from now, and even then I wouldn't say this makes them that complex so much as it gives them a history. I can appreciate that, but there's still just a bunch of rapists, pillagers, and murderers with no real survival skills that are poised to die out in a matter of years, if not months. I think Salt Upon Wounds really exemplifies everything I find wrong with the Whitelegs and even Honest Hearts as a whole. Daniel tries telling the player that even the Whitelegs deserve mercy and prayer, and the game tries to establish some degree of sympathy for Salt Upon Wounds in Joshua's ending where Joshua intends to execute him, but it feels more like character work for Joshua than it does for Salt Upon Wounds. I get that letting Joshua indulge in his more sadistic tendencies can be harmful to his character, but I don't have much of a sense as to what Salt Upon Wounds' execution means for himself, or even for the Whitelegs aside from him just being dead. I don't know what Salt Upon Wounds is like as a leader outside of being the strongest of the Whitelegs. What character traits do I have to latch onto as the neutral party? For Salt Upon Wounds, the answer really is none. But Honest Hearts' failures aren't just limited to the writing and world building. Gameplay is always going to be something of a hurdle for New Vegas, even when it's been heavily modded, but it's on the developers to use what systems they have to create engaging scenarios. Dead Money tackled this brilliantly with its emphasis on survival in a brutally difficult environment that forced the player to seriously consider each of their options. The closest that Honest Hearts really gets to trying anything fresh is the Ghost of She, and walking a baby bighorner across some elevated rocks. Not exactly what I would call a step up. And then there's the general frustrations, like dealing with all of the cliffs and plateaus that make traversal more of a pain than it needs to be. Combine that with the samey environments that lack any notable locations and those that do also feeling very samey, such as the caves, and what you ultimately have is a map that, while having some pluses going for it, is ultimately not very enjoyable to explore, which is one of, if not the most significant perks to having an open world setting. Obsidian had an opportunity to add so much more to New Vegas' map, but what we got from Honest Hearts feels more like a shallow leftover than a whole new body of water. Personally speaking, playing through this expansion as many times as I have recently for this video was a real slog, and bear in mind this DLC can be completed in a matter of 10 minutes. All you have to do is go straight to the Sorrows camp, kill Daniel, grab the map, and leave. In fact, that brings me to what is probably my very last issue with this DLC. I do want to make it clear that I really like that there's this sort of secret speedrunning strat to finishing this DLC. I think it's a fun little option for people not looking to do that serious of a playthrough. It's a really cool plus. However, there's no way to access the map prior to the final story quest of Honest Hearts without killing someone and initiating the quest Chaos in Zion. How cool would it be to just be able to grab the map and leave without having done a thing, thus initiating a whole new ending that gives a natural outcome to the conflict in Zion, one where the courier never interfered. It really feels like a missed opportunity. And I really think that's about how I would summarize Honest Hearts. A lot of missed opportunities. It's a real shame too, because what is good in Honest Hearts is really damn good. Joshua is fucking amazing, alright? Seriously, I can't gush about this character enough. But the expansion as a whole lacks a solid foundation, and as strong as Joshua Graham may be, even he cannot carry this DLC on his back. Honest Hearts may be a beautiful and honest story about the tragedy of the loss of innocence and how war and violence affects people and cultures, but it lacks the heart to elevate it to the level of Dead Money both with its narrative and with its gameplay. For those of you watching that really love Honest Hearts, I totally get why you do. Like I said, there are things to like about it, and there are some really damn good things to like about it. But if we're being objective, overall, this DLC is extremely lacking. But hey, if you think I'm wrong, feel free to tell me, man. Leave a comment. Let me know. I know that someone's going to want to argue about this, so I mean, hey, I might as well welcome it, you know? I really appreciate all of you watching. I hope those of you that like Honest Hearts aren't too upset with me, and that whether or not you did, you learned something new from this series. These videos have been a lot of fun to make, and I can't wait to put out more. If you'd like to chat with me personally, as well as others who are interested in the media I discuss, hop on over to the Sierra Madre Discord server. But I suppose that's all I've got for today. I'll see you all at the Big Empty.